They said I was throwing money away until I won $25 million in the lottery. But even $25 million couldn't buy back what they had already stolen from me. Today, I'm going to tell you something that I never thought I would share. And if you, for even a second, feel that this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe, because this story might help someone draw closer to God's love. Amen. My name is Judith Ashbrook, and I am 67 years old. The morning light filters through the lace curtains of my Chicago home. The same curtains I hung with trembling hands 35 years ago when Erwin and I first moved into this 3-story Victorian on Maple Street. The house that was supposed to shelter a growing family, witness birthday parties and Christmas mornings, hold the laughter of grandchildren playing in rooms that now echo only with the sound of my own footsteps. I sit at my kitchen table, the same oak table where I once helped Garrett with his algebra homework and braided Melissa's hair before school. My arthritic fingers trace the grain of the wood, following familiar patterns worn smooth by decades of family meals, bill paying, and quiet moments of prayer. Before me lies my well-worn Bible, open to Psalm 27, the leather cover soft and supple from years of faithful reading. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? I whisper the words. But this morning they feel hollow in my mouth. The coffee grows cold in my favorite mug. The one that reads, "World's Greatest Mom," in faded pink letters. A Mother's Day gift from Melissa when she was 12 and still believed her mother hung the moon. Now, at 42, she believes I've lost my mind. The irony stings like a slap across the face. Steam rises from the untouched oatmeal in my bowl. The same breakfast I've eaten for 20 years since Dr. Patterson warned me about cholesterol. Funny how I spent my entire career as a cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, saving other people's hearts, only to discover that my own children had systematically been breaking mine, piece by piece, check by check, lie by lie. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimes 8 times. Its deep brass voice the same sound that once announced bedtime stories and family gatherings. Now, it simply marks another day in a house that feels more like a mausoleum than a home. The morning light catches the dust motes dancing in the air, and I wonder if that's all I am now, just another speck floating aimlessly in space. My phone buzzes against the table, and my heart lurches with that familiar mixture of hope and dread that has defined my relationship with my children for the past 10 years, since Erwin died, since I became not their mother, but their ATM, since love became measured in dollar signs and visits became business transactions disguised as family obligation. The text message is from Garrett. "Mom, we need to talk. Important family meeting tonight. 7 p.m. Don't cook. We'll bring dinner. No, good morning. No, how are you feeling? No, I love you." Just another summons to what I've come to recognize as financial negotiations masquerading as family gatherings. The words on the screen blur as tears I refuse to shed sting my eyes. I set the phone down with trembling hands and reach for my reading glasses. The prescription changed 3 times in the past 2 years, because apparently even my vision is failing me now. But it's not my eyesight that's the problem. It's my heart sight. The ability to see my children as they truly are instead of who I desperately want them to be. I remember when Garrett was 7 years old, how he would climb into my lap while I was reading medical journals, his small fingers tracing the anatomical diagrams. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to help people like you do." His dark eyes, Erwin's eyes, were so earnest, so full of admiration. Where did that little boy go? When did he become this stranger who calls only when his credit cards are maxed out? And Melissa, my precious girl who used to leave me hand-drawn cards under my pillow when I worked late shifts at the hospital. "Thank you for saving lives, Mommy. You're my hero." Now she whispers to neighbors about my declining mental state and discusses guardianship papers with her husband over Sunday brunch as if I'm already dead. The house around me holds 40 years of memories in every corner. The living room where we opened Christmas presents, the dining room where we celebrated birthdays, the study where I reviewed patient files while my children did homework at my feet. Every piece of furniture, every photograph, every small treasure accumulated over decades of building what I thought was a life worth living. But this morning, sitting alone with my cold coffee and my open Bible, I realized that somewhere along the way, I stopped being their mother and became their inheritance. I stopped being a person and became a bank account. I stopped being loved and became tolerated until the money runs out. The phone rings, shattering the morning quiet like glass hitting concrete. The caller ID shows Melissa's smiling face, a photo from 3 years ago when she still pretended to enjoy our lunch dates. I let it ring 4 times before answering, steeling myself for whatever financial crisis has prompted this early morning call. "Hi, sweetheart," I say, injecting warmth into my voice that I don't feel. "Mom, thank goodness you answered. We really need to discuss this situation tonight. You can't keep living in that big house all alone. It's not safe. What if you fall? What if you forget to turn off the stove?" Her voice carries that patronizing tone she's perfected over the past few years, the one that makes me feel like a child being scolded instead of the woman who brought her into this world. "I'm fine, Melissa. I take care of myself perfectly well. That's what you think, but David and I have been talking and—" David, her husband, the man who shakes my hand with fingers that smell like another woman's perfume and looks at my house like he's already calculating its market value. "We think it's time to seriously consider assisted living. There are some beautiful places in the suburbs, much more appropriate for someone your age." Someone my age. As if 67 means incompetent. As if the woman who performed open-heart surgery for 35 years suddenly can't manage her own breakfast. I close my eyes and try to find the words that won't sound defensive, won't give them more ammunition for their campaign to declare me unfit. "We'll discuss it tonight," I say finally. "Good, because we've already made some inquiries. There's a lovely place in Naperville that—" I hang up. For the first time in my life, I hang up on my daughter. My hands are shaking so violently that I nearly drop the phone. The silence that follows feels like judgment. Have I become the difficult old woman they paint me as? Am I losing my grip on reality? Or are they slowly, systematically gaslighting me into believing I am? I walk to the window and look out at the maple tree Erwin planted the year Garrett was born. Its branches reach toward my bedroom window, the same branches that used to scrape against the glass during storms, keeping me awake. Now the sound would be welcome company in the endless quiet of my nights. "Lord," I whisper, my breath fogging the cold glass, "I don't understand what I did wrong. I loved them. I sacrificed for them. I gave them everything I had to give. Why do they treat me like I'm already dead?" The tree offers no answers, and heaven seems as silent as my empty house. But deep in my heart, in that place where mother love lives eternal and faith keeps flickering even in the darkest moments, I know something is terribly, fundamentally wrong with this picture. Tonight's family meeting isn't about my safety or my well-being. It's about something else entirely, something that makes my stomach clench with dread, and my spirit cry out for the wisdom that only comes from God. I pick up my Bible again and turn to Jeremiah 29:11. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future." Hope and a future. At 67, alone in a house full of ghosts, those words feel like promises made to someone else. But I cling to them anyway, because faith is all I have left when everything else has been stripped away by the very people who were supposed to love me most. After hanging up on Melissa, I find myself walking through the house like a ghost revisiting scenes of her former life. Each room tells a story of sacrifice, of choices made in the name of maternal love that somehow led me to this moment of profound betrayal. In the living room, I stop before the mahogany bookshelf where Erwin's medical journals still sit beside my own. Behind them, hidden like shameful secrets, are the canceled checks, the bank statements, the paper trail of a decade spent buying my children's affection one crisis at a time. My fingers trace the leather spine of a photo album, and I pull it out with the reverence one reserves for sacred texts. The first page shows Garrett's college graduation from Northwestern. I remember that day so clearly, how proud I felt watching him walk across the stage in his cap and gown. What I didn't know then was that he'd already racked up $30,000 in credit card debt, gambling on sports and buying expensive dinners for friends who disappeared the moment his money ran out. 2 weeks after graduation, he came to me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, I made some mistakes. I'm so ashamed. If Dad were alive, he'd be so disappointed in me." The tears were real, I thought. The shame seemed genuine. So I wrote the check. $30,000 from my retirement savings, money I'd earned through countless nights on call, weekend surgeries, emergency procedures that kept me away from my own family. This is the last time, he promised, holding my hands in his. I've learned my lesson. I'll pay you back as soon as I get established in my career. That was 8 years ago. I'm still waiting for the first payment. I turn the page and see Melissa's wedding photos. The ceremony cost me $45,000, money I withdrew from my investment portfolio while telling myself that every mother dreams of giving her daughter a perfect wedding day. Melissa had insisted on the Palmer House Hilton, the designer dress, the imported flowers that would wilt within hours, but somehow justified their astronomical cost. "It's my one special day, Mom," she'd said, trying on her third dress option at the boutique on Michigan Avenue. Dad would have wanted me to have the wedding of my dreams. Invoking Erwin's memory. That became their standard manipulation tactic after he died, as if he would have approved of their financial recklessness, their casual cruelty, their systematic draining of everything he'd worked so hard to build for our future. The wedding was beautiful. The marriage lasted 2 years before the first separation, 6 months of counseling that I paid for, and a reconciliation that required a fresh start in a new house. Guess who provided the down payment? $60,000 this time, because apparently love required granite countertops and a 3-car garage. I close the album and walk to the kitchen, where a stack of recent bills sits on the counter like evidence in a courtroom. The past 5 years blur together in a haze of manufactured emergencies and carefully orchestrated crises, each one requiring immediate maternal intervention. Garrett's roof needed repair after a freak hailstorm. $15,000, paid without inspection because he needed the work done immediately to prevent water damage. I later discovered he'd used the money to cover losses from day trading, a hobby he'd developed after watching too many YouTube videos about getting rich quick. Melissa's car broke down on the same day her credit cards were declined. "I don't know what I'm going to do, Mom. David's out of town on business, and I have no way to get to work." $22,000 for a reliable used BMW that she totaled 6 months later while texting and driving. The pattern became as predictable as the sunrise. Crisis, tears, emotional manipulation. Check. Crisis, tears, emotional manipulation. Check. Each emergency more urgent than the last. Each solution more expensive. Each promise to repay more hollow than the one before. But it wasn't just the money. It was the way they made me feel like I owed them something for the crime of having been a working mother. Every sacrifice I'd made to build my career, to provide for their future, to ensure they'd never want for anything, all of it twisted into evidence of my maternal failures. "You were never there when we needed you," Melissa would say, whenever I hesitated before writing another check. "You missed my dance recitals. You missed Garrett's baseball games. You chose your patience over your own children." The accusations hit their mark every time because they contained just enough truth to sting. I had missed things. I had worked late. I had prioritized saving lives over attending school events because in my mind, providing for my family's financial security was how I showed love. Erwin understood. He never made me feel guilty for the demands of my profession. "You're changing the world, Judith," he'd say on nights when I came home exhausted from a 12-hour surgery. "Our kids will understand someday that their mother was a healer, that she saved families by keeping hearts beating," but understanding never came. Instead, my absence became a weapon they wielded with surgical precision whenever they needed money, and like a fool, I paid. And paid. And paid. I walk upstairs to my bedroom and sit on the edge of the bed where Erwin and I used to plan our retirement. We'd spread brochures across the floral comforter, cruise ships and European tours, small towns in Vermont where we could spend quiet mornings reading newspapers and tending gardens. Simple dreams that seemed so achievable when we were both healthy and working. The dresser still holds his cologne bottle, empty now, but still carrying the faint scent of the man who loved me without conditions, without invoices, without emotional taxation. I open the jewelry box where I keep not diamonds or pearls, but the letters he wrote me during our courtship, the ticket stubs from our first movie date, the hospital ID badge from his one overnight stay when he had his appendix removed. treasures that cost nothing and meant everything. I pull out a letter dated December 15th, 1995, written on hospital stationery during one of my rare breaks between surgeries. My dearest Judith, watching you work tonight reminded me why I fell in love with you. Not just your skill or your intelligence, but your heart. The way you hold Mrs. Patterson's hand before surgery. The way you explain procedures to frightened families. The way you never give up, even when the odds seem impossible. Our children are lucky to have a mother who fights for life with such courage. I pray they inherit your strength and your compassion. All my love, Erwin. The irony burns like acid in my throat. Strength and compassion, the very qualities Erwin admired, have become my greatest vulnerabilities. Exploited by the children he prayed would inherit them. I sink to my knees beside the bed, the same position I've assumed thousands of times over the past decade, and open my heart to the God who seems to listen to everyone's prayers except mine. Lord Jesus, I don't understand your plan, I whisper into the silence of my empty bedroom. I tried to be a good mother. I gave them everything I had. I worked myself to exhaustion to provide for them. I sacrificed my own dreams so they could pursue theirs. Why do they treat me like an enemy instead of their mother? The words hang in the air like incense, heavy with the weight of unanswered questions and accumulated grief. I think of Hannah in the Bible, weeping before the Lord in her distress, and I wonder if God heard her cries more clearly than he seems to hear mine. My knees ache against the hardwood floor, but I remain in position, searching for some sign that my prayers are ascending higher than the ceiling fan that rotates slowly overhead. The late afternoon light filters through the sheer curtains, casting long shadows across the room where I've spent so many nights alone since Erwin died. Show me what to do, I continue, my voice barely above a whisper. Show me how to love them without enabling them. Show me how to be their mother without being their victim. Give me wisdom, Lord. Give me strength, because I'm drowning in my own generosity, and I don't know how much more I can take. The phone downstairs rings again, but I don't move. Whatever crisis awaits, whatever new emergency requires immediate financial intervention, it can wait. For the first time in years, I'm putting my conversation with God before my children's demands. But even as I pray, a small voice in the back of my mind whispers a question that terrifies me more than any diagnosis I ever delivered to a patient. Am I being tested, or just forgotten? The sun sets outside my bedroom window, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that remind me of the stained glass windows at St. Michael's, where I've attended Sunday service alone for the past 5 years. Where I sit in the same pew, third row from the back, and listen to sermons about loving your family, while my own family treats me like a stranger who happens to share their DNA. Tonight's family meeting looms ahead like a storm cloud on the horizon. Whatever they have planned, whatever new scheme they've devised to separate me from my remaining assets, I pray that God will give me the courage to face it with dignity intact. But deep in my heart, in that place where mother love lives alongside crushing disappointment, I fear that tonight will bring revelations that will shatter whatever illusions I still harbor about my children's capacity for genuine affection. The grandfather clock chimes 6 times, and I know I must prepare for whatever comes next. But first, I need to find the strength that can only come from surrender, not to their manipulation, but to God's will, whatever that might be. By 6:30, I've changed clothes 3 times, settling on the navy dress Erwin always said made me look distinguished. My hands shake as I apply lipstick in the bathroom mirror, the same coral shade I've worn for 20 years. But the woman staring back at me looks like a stranger, hollow-eyed, defeated, aged beyond her 67 years by the constant stress of loving people who no longer seem capable of loving her back. The doorbell rings exactly at 7, punctual as always when money is involved. I open the door to find them assembled like a tribunal. Garrett in his expensive suit, the one I bought him for his last job interview. Melissa clutching her designer purse, a Christmas gift from 2 years ago. And David, Melissa's husband, with his practiced smile that never reaches his eyes. Behind them stands Tessa, Garrett's wife, her blonde hair perfectly styled, and her expression radiating the kind of boredom that suggests this is just another tedious family obligation to endure. Hi, Mom, Garrett says, leaning in for a brief hug that feels more like a business handshake. You look tired. Are you sleeping okay? The question sounds caring, but I hear the subtext. Another piece of evidence for my declining mental state. Every stumble, every forgotten name, every moment of normal human frailty becomes ammunition in their campaign to prove I'm incompetent. They settle into my living room like predators claiming territory. Tessa immediately pulls out her phone, scrolling through social media while the rest of us pretend this is a normal family gathering. David examines my bookshelf with the calculating gaze of an appraiser, and I catch him photographing the titles with his phone. So, Melissa begins, her voice artificially bright. We brought Chinese food. Your favorite from Golden Dragon. She sets the bags on my coffee table with theatrical care, as if this small gesture of consideration cancels out years of emotional abuse. But it's not my favorite. My favorite was the little Thai place that closed 3 years ago. They've never bothered to learn my actual preferences, just assumed that all elderly women like sweet and sour pork and loman noodles. That's very thoughtful, I say, because 35 years of Midwest politeness are hard to break, even when your heart is shattering. We eat in relative silence, the kind of strained quiet that settles over people who share DNA but no longer share affection. Garrett makes small talk about his work in real estate, carefully omitting the fact that I know he hasn't closed a sale in 6 months. Melissa discusses her part-time job at the dental office, as if it's a career instead of the 20-hour-a-week position she took to get out of the house and away from David. The house really is too big for you, Mom, David says suddenly, gesturing around the living room where my family once gathered for Christmas mornings and birthday celebrations. All these stairs, these old radiators. The maintenance alone must be overwhelming. I want to tell him that I had the furnace serviced last month, that I exercise every morning and can still climb the stairs without becoming winded, that I've been maintaining this house successfully for 10 years without his help. Instead, I nod and take another bite of food that tastes like sawdust in my mouth. We've been doing some research, Melissa continues, pulling out a folder thick with brochures and printouts. There are some really wonderful senior living communities in the area, places where you'd have built-in social activities, meal planning, medical care on site. Tessa looks up from her phone long enough to add, and security. You really shouldn't be living alone at your age. What if something happened? What if you fell and couldn't get to the phone? What if? What if? What if? Their concern feels rehearsed, like lines they've practiced to justify what they're about to propose. I see through their performance to the calculation beneath. My house is worth $700,000, and they want their inheritance now, while they can still control how it's distributed. I appreciate your concern, I begin, but Garrett cuts me off. It's not just concern, Mom. It's reality. Last week you forgot our lunch date. The week before you called me James instead of Garrett. These things add up. James, Erwin's middle name. The name I've been saying in my prayers lately, asking my deceased husband for guidance from whatever realm he now inhabits. But to them, it's evidence of dementia instead of grief. And there was that incident with the stove, Melissa adds. Mrs. Henderson said she smelled gas coming from your kitchen. This is news to me. Mrs. Henderson is 83 years old and lives next door, but I haven't spoken to her in weeks. Either Melissa is lying, or my neighbors are being recruited as witnesses in their case against my competency. I don't remember any incident with the stove, I say carefully. See? David leans forward, his expression arranged in fake sympathy. That's exactly what we're talking about. Memory issues. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It happens to everyone as they age. But it does mean we need to start thinking about safety. The conversation continues around me like I'm not present, like I'm already the incompetent old woman they're determined to prove I am. They discuss my finances with casual intimacy, referencing accounts and investments as if they already have legal access to them. They debate the merits of different assisted living facilities as if I've already agreed to leave my home. The place in Naperville has a lovely chapel, Melissa says, spreading brochures across my coffee table. Non-denominational services every Sunday. You'd like that. Non-denominational. They don't even know I'm Catholic. 40 years of Sunday Mass at St. Michael's, 40 years of confession and communion and rosary prayers, and they think any generic chapel will satisfy my spiritual needs. I excuse myself to use the bathroom, but instead I slip into Erwin's study, a small room off the hallway that I've kept exactly as he left it. His medical books line the shelves, his reading glasses still sit on the desk beside a half-finished crossword puzzle, and his favorite pen, the Mont Blanc I gave him for our 20th anniversary, rests in the holder where he placed it the morning he died. I sink into his leather chair and bury my face in my hands. The familiar scent of his cologne still clings to the upholstery, faint but unmistakable, like a whisper from beyond. Erwin, I breathe into the silence. What would you tell me to do? How do I fight people who are supposed to love me? But the dead don't answer, and God seems as distant as my husband's voice. Through the thin walls, I can hear them talking about me in the living room, their voices carrying the casual cruelty of people discussing a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. She's definitely getting worse, I hear David say. The confusion, the memory gaps. It's textbook early-stage dementia. The lawyer said we need more documentation, Melissa responds. Medical records, witness statements. We can't just file for guardianship based on our observations. Guardianship. The word hits me like a physical blow. They're not just planning to move me into assisted living. They're planning to have me declared legally incompetent. They want to control my medical decisions, my financial decisions, my entire life. Dr. Martinez at her medical practice might be helpful, Garrett suggests. She knows Mom's health history. If we express our concerns about her living alone, they're recruiting my own doctor into their conspiracy. Dr. Martinez, who's been my physician for 15 years, who knows I'm as sharp as I ever was, who just last month pronounced me in excellent health for my age. But if my own children are expressing concerns about my mental state, how long before even she begins to question my competency? I hear footsteps approaching the study, and I quickly wipe my eyes and stand. Melissa appears in the doorway, her expression a mixture of impatience and manufactured concern. Mom? Are you okay? You've been in here for almost 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Added to their list of evidence that I'm losing track of time, losing my grip on reality. Every normal human behavior becomes pathological when viewed through the lens of their predetermined conclusion. I'm fine, I say, forcing a smile. Just looking for something. What were you looking for? Maybe we can help you find it. The question feels like a trap. Whatever I say will either prove I'm confused or demonstrate that I'm defensive about my confusion. There's no winning response. Just some old papers. I lie. Nothing important. We return to the living room, where the brochures for assisted living facilities have been arranged in neat rows across my coffee table, like invitations to my own funeral. The conversation resumes as if my brief absence was just another symptom of my declining mental state. The thing is, Mom, Garrett says, his voice taking on the patronizing tone he uses when explaining real estate contracts to elderly clients. We want what's best for you. We want you to be safe and happy. Safe and happy. In a sterile room in a building full of strangers, separated from every memory and possession that connects me to the life I built with their father. Safe from making my own decisions. Happy to have my remaining years managed by people who see me as a burden rather than their mother. I understand your concerns, I say finally, surprised by how steady my voice sounds. Can I have some time to think about it? They exchange glances, quick looks that communicate something I'm not meant to understand. Finally, David speaks. Of course. But, Mom, we really think sooner is better than later. These good facilities have waiting lists, and honestly, the longer you wait, the harder the transition becomes. Translation. Strike while I'm still shell-shocked, before I have time to seek legal advice or rally opposition to their plans. They leave shortly after, taking their empty takeout containers and their false concern with them. The house feels violated, as if strangers have cataloged my possessions and found them wanting. I walk through the rooms they've contaminated with their scheming, straightening cushions and clearing away the brochures that feel like eviction notices. In the kitchen, I pour myself a glass of wine, something I rarely do anymore since they started monitoring my habits for signs of alcoholism or poor judgment. But tonight, I need something to numb the sharp edges of betrayal that cut deeper with each breath. I sit in Erwin's chair with my rosary in my hands, the worn wooden beads smooth against my fingertips. Hail Mary, full of grace, I begin. But the familiar words feel empty, mechanical, like a foreign language I've forgotten how to speak with fluency. Our Father, who art in heaven, I try again. But heaven feels as unreachable as my children's love, as distant as the laughter that once filled these rooms. For the first time in my life, I wonder if I'm praying to silence, if God is listening to my children's prayers instead of mine, blessing their success while ignoring my pleas for mercy. If perhaps I've done something so terrible, so unforgivable, that I've been marked for abandonment by both divine and human love. The grandfather clock chimes 11 times, and I realize I've been sitting in the dark for 2 hours, holding my rosary but finding no comfort in its familiar weight. Outside, the street is quiet except for the occasional car passing by, carrying people home to families who love them without conditions, without calculations, without lies. I am utterly, completely alone. I don't sleep that night. Instead, I lie in my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of their carefully orchestrated intervention. By dawn, a terrible clarity settles over me like frost on glass. This wasn't a spontaneous expression of concern. It was a planned assault, executed with the precision of a surgical procedure. At 6 in the morning, I call the one person I trust more than my own children, Margaret Sullivan, my neighbor across the street and fellow parishioner at St. Michael's. Margaret is 73, sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, and has been watching the comings and goings on Maple Street for 40 years. "Judith, honey," she says, her Irish accent still thick despite 5 decades in Chicago. "You sound terrible. What's wrong?" "Margaret, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you noticed anything unusual about my behavior lately? Anything that would suggest I'm declining mentally?" There's a long pause, and I hold my breath. Declining? Good Lord, no. You're sharper than women half your age. Just last week you helped me figure out my tablet when my grandson couldn't. Why would you ask such a thing? Relief floods through me like medicine through an IV. My children are saying I'm showing signs of dementia. They want to put me in assisted living. Margaret's response is immediate and fierce. Those ungrateful creatures. "Judith, you're one of the most competent people I know. You still drive better than most people my age. You manage that big house beautifully, and you remember everything, including their birthdays, which is more than they do for you." Her words give me courage to make the next call, one I've been avoiding because it feels like admitting defeat. I dial the number for Thomas Brennan, an attorney who handled Irwin's estate and has been sending me Christmas cards for 10 years. "Mrs. Ashbrook," his secretary says warmly when I identify myself. "Mr. Brennan will be so pleased to hear from you. Please hold." Tom comes on the line within minutes, his voice carrying genuine warmth. "Judith, how wonderful to hear from you. I hope everything is well. Tom, I need your help. My children are planning to file for guardianship. They want to have me declared incompetent." The silence that follows is pregnant with legal implications. When Tom speaks again, his tone has shifted to professional concern. "That's a very serious allegation, Judith. Have you been experiencing any cognitive issues? Any problems managing your affairs?" "None whatsoever. But they're creating a narrative. They're saying I forget things, that I'm confused, that I'm a danger to myself. They've even recruited my neighbors and possibly my doctor." "I see. And what's their motivation? Are there financial pressures involved?" I laugh, but there's no humor in it. I've given them over $300,000 in the past 8 years, Tom. Every time they have a crisis, they come to me. And now they want access to everything. The house, my investments, my pension. 300,000? His shock is audible. "Judith, why didn't you call me? I could have helped you structure those gifts to protect your assets. Because I thought I was helping my children. I thought I was being a good mother. You were being a good mother, but they're being terrible children." His bluntness is both shocking and validating. For months, I've wondered if I was overreacting, if my hurt feelings were clouding my judgment. But Tom's immediate understanding tells me my instincts are correct. "Here's what we're going to do," he continues. "First, I want you to come in today for a complete cognitive assessment. I know a neuropsychologist who specializes in competency evaluations. If anyone questions your mental state, we'll have documentation proving otherwise. And then? Then we make sure your assets are protected from predatory family members. After scheduling the appointment, I drive to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where I spent 35 years saving lives and building a reputation for excellence. Dr. Sarah Chen, the current chief of cardiology, greets me in her office with the respect accorded to legends. Dr. Ashbrook, what an honor. What brings you here today? I explain my situation without sugarcoating the betrayal. Sarah listens with the intensity she once brought to complex surgical cases, asking probing questions and taking notes. I'm going to do something that might feel intrusive, she says finally. I want to give you a mini mental state examination. Not because I doubt your competency, but because you need documentation that can withstand legal scrutiny. For the next hour, I answer questions, complete puzzles, and demonstrate cognitive functions. Sarah scores my responses in real time, and when she's finished, she smiles. Judith, your cognitive function is not just normal for your age. It's superior. Your memory, reasoning, and problem-solving skills are in the 95th percentile for women in their 60s. If your children try to claim you're incompetent, this evaluation will demolish their case. The relief is overwhelming, but it's followed immediately by rage. They've been gaslighting me for months, making me question my own sanity, when all along I've been functioning at peak capacity. But Sarah isn't finished. There's something else you should know. Dr. Martinez called me yesterday. My blood turns to ice. What did she say? She wanted my opinion about a patient whose family was expressing concerns about dementia. She described the symptoms they reported, and I told her it sounded like normal aging combined with family manipulation. Then she mentioned it was you, and I told her exactly what I just told you, that you're one of the sharpest people I know. So my own children tried to recruit my doctor into their conspiracy. It appears so. But Dr. Martinez saw through it immediately. She's been your physician long enough to know there's nothing wrong with your cognitive function. I drive home in a daze, my mind reeling from the implications. Not only are my children planning to steal my independence, they're actively working to undermine my relationships with medical professionals who could expose their lies. That afternoon, I do something I've never done before. I hire a private investigator. James Morrison comes recommended by Tom Brennan's law firm. He's a former police detective in his 50s, soft-spoken but with eyes that miss nothing. We meet at a coffee shop downtown, far from Maple Street and prying neighbors. Mrs. Ashbrook, I want you to understand that this kind of investigation can uncover things you might not want to know. He warns gently. Are you prepared for that possibility? I think about the voice I overheard through the heating vent, the calculation in David's eyes, the lies they've been spreading about my mental state. I need to know the truth, I tell him. All of it. James nods and opens his notebook. Tell me everything. I spend 2 hours detailing 8 years of financial manipulation, emotional abuse, and systematic gaslighting. James takes notes without judgment, asking clarifying questions about dates, amounts, and specific incidents. I'll need access to your financial records, he says finally. Bank statements, canceled checks, anything that documents the money transfers. And I'll need permission to investigate your children's financial situations. What are you looking for? Patterns, debt, lifestyle choices that don't match their declared income, evidence of financial stress that might motivate this kind of behavior. 3 days later, James calls with preliminary findings that make my stomach drop. Mrs. Ashbrook, you need to sit down for this. I'm already sitting in my kitchen, but I grip the edge of the table anyway. Your son Garrett has been forging your signature on financial documents. I found evidence of at least 12 unauthorized transactions over the past 2 years, totaling approximately $40,000. The room starts to spin. That's impossible. I would have noticed. He's been intercepting your bank statements and replacing them with doctored versions. You've been seeing false balances for months. My hands shake as I reach for my reading glasses. What else? Your daughter Melissa has been spreading rumors about your mental state to more than just your doctor. She's contacted your insurance company, your investment advisor, and at least 3 assisted living facilities, claiming to be acting on behalf of a woman with dementia. Each revelation hits like a physical blow. They haven't just been stealing my money. They've been systematically destroying my reputation and credibility. And David? I ask, though I'm not sure I want to know. David is in financial trouble. His real estate firm is under investigation for fraud. He needs money quickly, and your assets represent his only way out. What about Tessa? James pauses, and I hear papers rustling. This is where it gets complicated. Tessa appears to be documenting everything. Phone calls, family meetings, financial transactions. Either she's gathering evidence to protect herself, or what? Or she's planning to testify against them when this goes to court. The possibility that Garrett's wife might be the key to exposing their scheme is almost too ironic to process. The daughter-in-law I've always considered shallow and self-absorbed might be the one person positioned to save me. That evening, I sit in my living room with all the evidence spread across my coffee table like puzzle pieces finally forming a coherent picture. Bank statements showing forged signatures, medical records proving my competency, a private investigator's report documenting their lies and schemes. For the first time in months, I feel something other than despair. I feel anger, pure, righteous anger at the children who have stolen not just my money, but my peace of mind, my trust in family bonds, my faith in unconditional love. I pick up my rosary, but instead of praying for patience or forgiveness, I pray for something different. Lord Jesus, I whisper into the quiet house, I have been meek. I have turned the other cheek. I have forgiven 70 times 7. But these people are not just hurting me. They're planning to destroy me. If you have a plan to stop this, please show me the way. Give me the strength to fight back. For the first time in weeks, my prayer doesn't feel like it's disappearing into an empty sky. It feels like it's been heard. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I allow myself to consider a question that both terrifies and exhilarates me. Would Jesus forgive this too? Should I forgive again? Or is there a time when love requires boundaries, when turning the other cheek becomes enabling evil? Outside my window, the maple tree Irwin planted sways in the evening breeze, its branches reaching toward heaven like arms raised in surrender or supplication. But tonight, I'm done surrendering. Tonight, I'm ready to fight for the life God gave me and the dignity my children are trying to steal. The war for my freedom is about to begin. The next morning, I wake up before dawn with a clarity I haven't felt in years. For the first time since Irwin died, I know exactly what I need to do. I make coffee with steady hands and sit at my kitchen table with a legal pad, writing down each step of my liberation like a surgical procedure I'm planning to save my own life. Step 1. Protect my assets immediately. At exactly 9 o'clock, I'm sitting in Tom Brennan's office with a stack of documents that will change everything. The revocable trust I'd established years ago is about to become my fortress. Judith, what you're doing is not just smart. It's necessary, Tom says as he reviews the paperwork. By moving your assets into an irrevocable trust, you're making it legally impossible for anyone to access them without your explicit consent, even if they somehow obtained guardianship. And my house will be protected. They can't force you to sell it, can't use it as collateral, can't even step foot on the property without your permission once these documents are filed. I sign each page with the same precision I once used to suit your hearts, feeling my power return with every stroke of the pen. For 8 years, I've been hemorrhaging money and dignity. Today, the bleeding stops. Step 2. Cut off their access to emergency funds. The drive to First National Bank feels like a pilgrimage to reclaim my soul. I've been banking here for 30 years, and the manager, Patricia Williams, greets me with genuine warmth. Dr. Ashbrook, what can we do for you today? I need to close my joint checking account with my son, and I need to remove both of my children from any accounts where they have access. Patricia's expression grows concerned. Is everything all right? Has there been some kind of fraud? I place James Morrison's report on her desk. You could say that. 20 minutes later, Garrett and Melissa's access to my financial life has been completely severed. No more emergency withdrawals. No more forged signatures. No more treating my bank account like their personal ATM. There is one thing you should know, Patricia says, as she prints out my new account information. Your son was here last Tuesday asking about your account balance. He claimed he was helping you manage your finances due to health concerns. Another piece of evidence for their systematic campaign to portray me as incompetent. What did you tell him? Nothing. Bank policy requires written authorization for that kind of information, which he couldn't provide. But he was persistent. I can imagine. Garrett has always been persistent when money is involved. Step 3. Take control of my narrative. Dr. Martinez's office is my next stop. I've been seeing her for 15 years, and I refuse to let my children poison that relationship with their lies. Judith, she says, embracing me warmly when I arrive for my unscheduled appointment. I have to tell you, I received some concerning calls about you this week. I know, that's why I'm here. I spend the next hour providing her with copies of my cognitive assessment, Tom Brennan's legal opinion, and James Morrison's investigation report. Dr. Martinez reads everything with the thoroughness that made me trust her as my physician. I'm appalled, she says finally. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. And the fact that they tried to use me as an unwitting accomplice makes me furious. Will you document this conversation in my medical records? Absolutely. And Judith, if anyone contacts you claiming I've expressed concerns about your mental state, you tell them to call me directly. I'll set them straight. Driving home, I feel lighter than I have in months. Each protective measure I've put in place is like removing a weight from my shoulders. But the hardest part is still ahead. That afternoon, I do something I haven't done in over a decade. I say no. Garrett calls at 3:30, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Mom, there's been some kind of mistake at the bank. They're saying I don't have access to your checking account anymore. There's no mistake, Garrett. I removed your access. Silence. Then, what? Why would you do that? Because you've been forging my signature and stealing my money. That's ridiculous. I would never. $40,000, Garrett. Over 12 separate transactions. I have documentation of everything. The silence stretches so long, I wonder if he's hung up. When he finally speaks, his voice has changed. Gone is the panicked confusion, replaced by cold calculation. Mom, you're clearly confused. This is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking we've been worried about. Maybe we need to move faster on the assisted living discussion. The only thing I'm confused about is how I raise children who could treat their mother this way. We're coming over tonight. We need to have a serious conversation about your mental state. No, you're not. Excuse me? You're not coming to my house tonight or any other night unless I invite you. And right now, Garrett, you're not welcome here. I hang up before he can respond. And for the first time in years, I feel truly powerful. The word no has been absent from my vocabulary for so long I'd forgotten how satisfying it could be. 30 minutes later, Melissa calls. Her approach is different. Tears instead of threats, emotional manipulation instead of intimidation. Mom, Garrett told me what happened at the bank. I don't understand why you're doing this. We love you. We're trying to help you. If you love me, why have you been telling people I have dementia? I never said. You contacted my insurance company, my investment advisor, and multiple assisted living facilities, claiming to act on behalf of a woman with cognitive decline. I have documentation, Melissa. Her sobs sound genuine. And for a moment, my maternal instincts kick in. This is my little girl, the daughter I rocked to sleep and comforted through nightmares and heartbreaks. But then I remember the cold calculation in her voice when she discussed guardianship proceedings, and I steel myself against her tears. We were just worried about you living alone in that big house. You seemed confused lately, forgetting things. I had a complete cognitive assessment yesterday, Melissa. My mental function is superior for my age group. There's nothing wrong with my memory except that I remember every lie you've told me. You had an assessment? Without telling us? I don't need your permission to see a doctor, and I certainly don't need your permission to protect myself from people who are trying to steal my independence. We're not stealing anything. We're your children. Yes, you are. And that makes this betrayal so much worse. She tries a different tactic. Mom, David's in some financial trouble. We didn't want to worry you, but he might lose his job. If we could just borrow... No, you didn't even let me finish. I don't need to hear the details. The answer is no. No more loans, no more emergencies, no more using your mother as a bank. But we're family. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't spread lies about dementia. Family doesn't plan to have their mother declared incompetent so they can steal her assets. I hang up on her too, and the silence that follows feels sacred. That evening, I do something I haven't done since Erwin died. I cook a meal just for myself, not leftovers from a meal planned for people who don't appreciate it, not something quick and sad eaten standing at the kitchen counter. I prepare salmon with herbs from the garden Erwin planted, wild rice, and green beans. I set the dining room table with my good china, light candles, and pour myself a glass of wine. As I eat in the soft candlelight, I say a prayer of gratitude for the strength to finally protect myself. Thank you, Lord, for giving me the courage to stop enabling their greed. Thank you for helping me remember that I am your daughter first, worthy of respect and dignity. The food tastes better than anything I've eaten in months, because it's seasoned with self-respect instead of resentment. After dinner, I call Margaret Sullivan and invite her for coffee tomorrow morning. It's time to start rebuilding the friendships I've neglected while pouring all my energy into ungrateful children. Judith, I'm so proud of you, Margaret says when I tell her about my day. It takes real courage to stand up to family members, especially when they're trying to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. I keep wondering if I'm being selfish, if a good Christian mother should just forgive and forget. Honey, Jesus threw the money changers out of the temple. Sometimes love requires boundaries. You can forgive your children without enabling their abuse. Her words settle over me like a blessing. For the first time in years, I sleep through the night without waking up anxious about what financial crisis will greet me in the morning. But God isn't finished with the revelations yet. The next afternoon, my doorbell rings. When I look through the peephole, I see Tessa standing on my front porch, alone. She's wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual designer outfits, and her expression is nervous but determined. Mrs. Ashbrook, could I come in? I need to talk to you about something important. I hesitate. Tessa has never sought a private conversation with me in the 8 years she's been married to Garrett, but something in her demeanor suggests this isn't part of their conspiracy. All right, I say, opening the door. Come in. She sits on the edge of my sofa, clutching her purse like a lifeline. I know you probably think I'm part of whatever Garrett and Melissa are planning, but I'm not. In fact, I'm here to warn you. My pulse quickens. Warn me about what? They're meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. They want to file for emergency guardianship. They're claiming you're a danger to yourself and that you're showing signs of severe dementia. Do you have proof of this? Tessa reaches into her purse and pulls out her phone. I've been recording their conversations for months. I knew something wasn't right when Garrett started obsessing over your finances, and Melissa kept talking about assisted living facilities. She plays a recording that makes my blood run cold. It's Garrett's voice, clear and unmistakable. The lawyer says if we can get 3 witnesses to testify about her mental decline, we can get temporary guardianship while the full evaluation is pending. Once we have control, we can sell the house and move the money into accounts she can't access. The casual cruelty in his voice, my own son discussing my destruction like a business transaction, leaves me speechless. There's more, Tessa says quietly. Melissa has been forging medical records to support their case, and David has been stealing from his real estate firm. They need your money to keep him out of prison. I look at this young woman, who I've always dismissed as shallow and materialistic, and I realize I've been completely wrong about her character. Why are you telling me this? I ask. Because what they're doing is evil, she says simply, and because I'm leaving Garrett. I can't be married to someone who would destroy his own mother for money. She hands me a flash drive. Everything is on here. Recorded conversations, copies of forged documents, evidence of David's fraud. It's enough to stop them and probably send them to prison. As she stands to leave, I touch her arm. Tessa, thank you. You may have saved my life. She smiles sadly. I just hope someday I'm half the woman you are, Mrs. Ashbrook. You deserve so much better than this. After she leaves, I sit in my living room holding the flash drive that contains the ammunition to destroy my children's lives. The weight of it feels enormous, not because of its physical mass, but because of the choice it represents. I can fight back now. I can expose their lies, their crimes, their betrayal. I can make them pay for what they've tried to do to me. But should I? Would Jesus approve of the war I'm about to wage? I kneel beside my bed that night and pray for wisdom, for guidance, for the strength to do what's right, even when what's right might break what's left of our family forever. Show me the way, Lord, I whisper. Show me how to love them without destroying myself. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, the war begins in earnest. I spend the morning in prayer at St. Michael's, kneeling before the statue of the Sacred Heart that has watched over my conversations with God for 40 years. The familiar scent of incense and the soft glow of votive candles create a sanctuary where I can finally hear the Lord's voice clearly through the chaos of my shattered family. Give me strength, I whisper, my rosary moving through my fingers like a lifeline, not for revenge, but for justice, not to destroy, but to protect. Help me love them enough to stop enabling their destruction of themselves and others. Father McKenna finds me there at 11 o'clock, still kneeling, still praying. He's been our parish priest for 15 years, a gentle man in his 70s who has buried my husband and celebrated countless holidays with families who consider him part of their spiritual foundation. Judith, he says softly, settling into the pew behind me. Margaret Sullivan called me. She's concerned about you. I turn to face him, and he sees something in my expression that makes him lean forward with pastoral attention. Father, if someone you love is destroying themselves and trying to destroy you in the process, what does Christian love require? Enabling their sin? Or stopping it? He's quiet for a long moment, studying my face with the wisdom of someone who's counseled families through every form of human crisis. Tell me what's happening, my child. I show him Tessa's flash drive, Tom Brennan's legal documents, and James Morrison's investigation report. Father McKenna reviews everything with the same careful attention he brings to preparing his homilies, occasionally shaking his head or sighing deeply. Judith, this is not a crisis of faith, he says finally. This is a case of children who have lost their way so completely that they're willing to commit crimes against their own mother. Your obligation as a Christian is to love them, yes. But love sometimes requires consequences, even if those consequences might send them to prison, especially then. Prison might be the only thing that saves David from continuing down this path, and your children need to face the reality of what they've become before they can find their way back to the people God created them to be. His words settle over me like absolution. I'm not betraying my faith by protecting myself. I'm honoring it by refusing to participate in their moral destruction. At 2 o'clock, I'm sitting in my living room when 3 cars pull up to my house. Through the window, I watch my children emerge from one vehicle while 2 men in suits step out of another. The third car contains a woman with a clipboard and a stern expression, probably a social worker assigned to evaluate my competency. They approach my front door like an army advancing on an enemy position. But I'm ready for them now. The doorbell rings, and I take a deep breath before opening it. Garrett stands at the front of the group, his face a mask of false concern. Mom, we need to talk. We've brought some people to help us understand what's been going on with you. I know exactly what's going on, I say calmly. Please, come in. They file into my living room with the confidence of people who believe they hold all the cards. The attorneys settle into chairs with briefcases full of guardianship papers. The social worker positions herself with a clear view of my behavior. Garrett and Melissa sit together on my sofa, presenting a united front of worried children. Mrs. Ashbrook, one of the lawyers, begins. We're here because your children are concerned about your welfare. They've reported incidents of confusion, memory loss, and poor judgment that suggest you may need assistance managing your affairs. I nod politely. I see. And what specific incidents are they referring to? Melissa speaks up, her voice quavering with manufactured emotion. Mom, you've been forgetting conversations, calling people by the wrong names, and making irrational financial decisions. We're worried you might hurt yourself. Irrational financial decisions, I repeat. Like what? Like changing all your bank accounts without telling us, Garrett adds. Like hiring lawyers and investigators to spy on your own family. The social worker makes notes on her clipboard. Mrs. Ashbrook, have you been experiencing any confusion or memory problems lately? None whatsoever, I reply. In fact, I had a complete neuropsychological evaluation 3 days ago that shows my cognitive function is superior for my age group. Would you like to see the results? I hand her Dr. Chen's report, and I watch the confidence begin to drain from my children's faces as she reads it. This is very comprehensive, the social worker says, glancing at the lawyers. Mrs. Ashbrook, your test scores are excellent. There's no indication of cognitive impairment here. But she's been acting strange, Melissa insists. Paranoid, suspicious of everyone who loves her. Not suspicious, I correct gently. Informed. I walk to my desk and retrieve a folder thick with evidence. I'd like to share some information with all of you. The first document I distribute is James Morrison's investigation report. As they read about the forged signatures, the fraudulent medical claims, and the systematic campaign to portray me as incompetent, the temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees. This is ridiculous, Garrett says, but his voice lacks conviction. These are just accusations from some private investigator we've never heard of. Actually, I say, pulling out Tessa's flash drive, these are recordings of your own conversations. I connect the drive to my laptop and play the recording where Garrett discusses getting 3 witnesses to testify about my mental decline so they can gain temporary guardianship. The room falls silent, except for his disembodied voice coldly planning my destruction. The social worker stops taking notes and stares at Garrett with undisguised disgust. The lawyers exchange glances that suggest they're reconsidering their involvement in this case. There's more, I continue, playing Melissa's recorded conversation about forging medical records and David's desperate need for money to avoid prosecution. These recordings were obtained illegally, David sputters. They can't be used. Actually, they can, Tom Brennan says, appearing in my doorway as planned. Illinois is a one-party consent state. Tessa had every right to record conversations she was part of. The sight of my attorney causes panic to flash across my children's faces. They thought they were ambushing a confused old woman, but instead, they've walked into a carefully planned intervention of their own. Mrs. Ashbrook, one of the lawyers says, standing quickly. It appears there's been some misunderstanding. We were given information that appears to be inaccurate. Not inaccurate, I correct. Deliberately false. My children have been engaged in elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy to commit guardianship abuse. They've forged my signature on financial documents and attempted to manipulate medical professionals into supporting false claims about my mental state. The social worker closes her clipboard and addresses Garrett and Melissa directly. I'll be filing a report recommending that this guardianship petition be dismissed and that an investigation be opened into your conduct. What I've seen here today constitutes elder abuse under Illinois law. Now wait just a minute, Garrett says, his careful facade cracking completely. We're her children. We have the right to be concerned about her welfare. You have the right to love and support your mother, Tom Brennan replies. You do not have the right to defraud her, forge her signature, or conspire to steal her assets. Melissa starts crying. Real tears this time, born of fear rather than manipulation. Mom, we never meant for it to go this far. We were just worried about you, and things got out of hand. I look at my daughter, this 42-year-old woman who still thinks tears can wash away the consequences of her choices, and I feel something I haven't felt in years. Complete clarity about who she really is. Melissa, I say softly, you contacted my insurance company pretending to act on behalf of a woman with dementia. You spread rumors about my mental state to neighbors and medical professionals. You participated in planning to have me declared incompetent so you could steal my house and my life savings. Those aren't the actions of someone who's worried. They're the actions of someone who's criminal. We're your children, Garrett shouts, his composure finally shattering completely. You can't just cut us off. You owe us. We're your family. You're right. I stand up, drawing strength from 40 years of prayer and a lifetime of hard-earned wisdom. You are my children. I brought you into this world. I fed you, clothed you, educated you, and loved you unconditionally for decades. And that's exactly why this betrayal cuts so deep. I walk to my mantelpiece and take down a framed verse from Matthew that Erwin gave me on our wedding day. By their fruits, you shall know them. I know you by your fruits now, I continue, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. And the fruit of your lives has been greed, dishonesty, manipulation, and cruelty toward the woman who sacrificed everything for your welfare. So what? David sneers. You're going to send us to prison? Your own children? I'm going to give you a choice, I reply, surprising everyone in the room, including myself. The same choice God gives all of us. Repentance or consequences. Tom Brennan looks at me questioningly, but I nod for him to let me continue. You can sign agreements to repay every penny you've stolen from me. You can enter counseling to address whatever darkness in your hearts made this seem acceptable. You can make public apologies to every person you lied to about my mental state. And you can stay out of my life until you can prove you've become people worthy of my trust again. And if we don't, Garrett asks, then I'll press charges for fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and conspiracy. The district attorney has been very interested in the evidence we've compiled. The lawyers are already backing toward the door, unwilling to be associated with clients who've been caught red-handed in multiple felonies. The social worker is packing her materials, her report already written in her mind. You have 48 hours to decide, I tell my children. But understand this, regardless of what you choose, you will never again have access to my home, my finances, or my decisions. I forgive you, because Jesus commands me to forgive. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll enable your destruction of yourselves and others. I need someone who matches my future, I continue, remembering words I'd heard in a different context. I need people in my life who match the peace and dignity I want for my remaining years. Until you can become those people, you're not welcome here. Melissa reaches for me as they file out, but I step back. Mom, please. We can work this out. We're family. Yes, we are family. I agree. And someday, I pray you'll remember what that word actually means. When you do, I'll be here, but I won't be your victim anymore. After they leave, Tom Brennan and I sit in my living room reviewing what just happened. Judith, that was extraordinary, he says. You offered them justice with mercy. You gave them a path to redemption while protecting yourself completely. I learned it from someone who offered the same choice to me, I reply, looking up at the crucifix on my wall. The only difference is, I took it. That evening, I kneel beside my bed and pray for my children with a heart that's broken but no longer bitter. I pray that they'll choose repentance over pride, that they'll find their way back to the people God created them to be. But for the first time in years, I also pray for myself, thanksgiving for the strength to stop enabling their sin and the wisdom to love them enough to let them face the consequences of their choices. Outside my window, the maple tree Erwin planted sways in the evening breeze, its roots deep and strong, its branches reaching toward heaven. Like my faith, it has weathered many storms and grown more beautiful for having survived them. The war is over. Now the healing can begin. The 48-hour deadline passes in silence. No phone calls, no texts, no last-minute pleas for mercy or promises of reform. My children have chosen pride over repentance, and while my heart aches for what they've lost, my spirit feels lighter than it has in a decade. On the third morning, I do something I haven't done since Erwin died. I wake up excited about the day ahead. The sun streams through my bedroom curtains with a brightness that seems almost divine, and for the first time in years, I don't immediately reach for my phone to check for crisis messages from Garrett or Melissa. There are no emergencies waiting for me, no manufactured dramas requiring my immediate financial intervention, no guilt-laden voicemails designed to extract money from my retirement savings. I am free. I make breakfast for myself. Real breakfast, not the hurried coffee and toast I've survived on for years while rushing to solve other people's problems. I scramble eggs with herbs from the garden, toast homemade bread, and brew coffee in my good china cup while classical music plays from the radio Erwin gave me for our 25th anniversary. As I eat, I open my Bible to Psalm 30. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. The words seem written specifically for this moment, this morning, this new chapter of my life that's beginning at age 67. After breakfast, I call Margaret Sullivan with an invitation that surprises even me. Margaret, would you like to go to the Art Institute today? I haven't been in years, and I suddenly have a strong desire to see beautiful things created by people who understood that life is meant to be celebrated, not just endured. Margaret's delighted laughter carries through the phone. Judith Ashbrook, you sound like a completely different woman. Yes, I'd love to go. It's been too long since either of us did something purely for joy. At the museum, surrounded by paintings that have survived centuries of war and change, I feel my soul expanding to fill spaces that had been compressed by years of family manipulation. We stand before Monet's water lilies, and I remember why I once loved beauty for its own sake, before every pleasure became weighed against its cost, and every moment of happiness became shadowed by guilt that I wasn't solving someone else's problems. You know, Margaret says as we sit in the museum cafe afterward, I've been praying for you for months. Not just for your situation to improve, but for you to remember who you were before all this started. Who was I ask, genuinely curious about the woman I'd almost forgotten. Brilliant, independent, funny, generous with your time and talents, not just your money. You used to volunteer at the Children's Hospital, remember? You taught Sunday school. You organized charity drives and visited shut-ins and made casseroles for new mothers. The memories flood back like water breaking through a dam. I had been those things before my children convinced me that my only value lay in my ability to write checks and solve their self-created crises. I'd like to be that woman again, I say, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. Then be her, Margaret replies simply. God hasn't changed his plans for your life just because you're 67. That afternoon, I drive to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where I spent 35 years saving lives and building a reputation for excellence. The lobby has been renovated since my retirement, but the familiar smell of antiseptic and the purposeful energy of healing still feel like home. Dr. Sarah Chen meets me in her office with a warmth that reminds me why I chose medicine as my calling. Judith, what brings you back to us? I want to volunteer, I say without preamble. I want to be useful again. I want to remember what it feels like to help people who actually need help, not people who are simply too lazy or irresponsible to help themselves. Sarah's face lights up. Are you serious? We could use someone with your experience in so many ways. Patient education, family counseling, mentoring young residents who need to learn bedside manner from someone who perfected it. I'm completely serious. I have decades of knowledge that shouldn't go to waste, and I have time that's finally my own to spend as I choose. Within an hour, I'm enrolled in the hospital's volunteer orientation program. I'll be working with cardiac patients and their families, helping them understand procedures and navigate the fear that comes with heart disease. It's work that combines my medical expertise with my hard-earned wisdom about family dynamics and the importance of setting healthy boundaries. You're going to be wonderful at this, Sarah says as she walks me to the elevator. There's something different about you, Judith. You seem liberated. I am, I reply. I've finally learned the difference between loving people and enabling them. That evening, I do something else I haven't done in years. I call old friends. The first call goes to Helen Rodriguez, my medical school roommate who moved to Phoenix after retirement. We'd lost touch gradually over the years as my children's demands consumed more and more of my time and emotional energy. Judith, Helen's voice carries genuine delight. I was just thinking about you last week. How are you, my dear friend? We talk for 2 hours, catching up on decades of life changes, sharing stories about retirement challenges and joys. Helen tells me about her volunteer work with literacy programs and her weekly hiking group that's taught her that adventure doesn't end at 60. You should come visit, she says as our conversation winds down. I have a guest room and a convertible, and I know some beautiful desert trails that would remind you why God created such magnificent landscapes. I might just do that, I say. And I mean it. For the first time in years, travel sounds like possibility rather than abandonment of duty. The second call goes to Father McKenna, not for counseling this time, but to volunteer. Father, I'd like to help with the parish meal program. I have time now, and I'd like to serve people who are genuinely hungry rather than just greedy. Judith, that's wonderful news. We serve meals every Tuesday and Thursday evening, and we can always use someone with your organizational skills. But I have to ask, how are you doing after everything that's happened? I'm discovering that there's life after family dysfunction, I tell him. I'm learning that God had plans for me that went beyond being an ATM for ungrateful children. Father McKenna chuckles. He always does, my child. He always does. On Sunday morning, I attend Mass with a heart that's finally open to receiving blessings instead of just pleading for relief from suffering. The familiar liturgy feels new again. The prayers feel genuine instead of desperate. And when Father McKenna delivers his homily about the parable of the prodigal son, I hear it with fresh ears. The story isn't just about the son who left and returned, I realize. It's also about the father who loved enough to let him go, who didn't chase after him with money and excuses and endless second chances that would have prevented the growth that came through consequences. After Mass, several parishioners approach me with kindness that feels different from the pity I'd grown accustomed to receiving. "Judith," says Rose Patterson, a widow in her 70s who lost her husband last year, "I've been wanting to invite you to our book club. We meet every other Wednesday at the parish hall, and we're starting a wonderful book about prayer and healing." "I'd love that," I reply, realizing that I haven't read for pleasure in years. Every spare moment had been consumed by worrying about my children's latest crises or planning how to solve their self-created problems. And, adds Maria Santos, whose husband owns the restaurant where my children ambushed me months ago, some of us ladies have been talking about organizing a retreat weekend. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place to pray and reflect and remember who we are in God's eyes. The idea of a retreat sounds like exactly what my soul needs. Time to pray without interruption, to read scripture without my phone buzzing with demands for money, to remember what it feels like to be loved by God without conditions or expectations. That afternoon, I do something that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. I buy lottery tickets. Not because I need the money, but because I finally understand that hope is a gift we give ourselves. Standing in line at the corner store where I've bought groceries for 20 years, I choose numbers with deliberate joy. Erwin's birthday, our wedding anniversary, the date I graduated from medical school, the day I first held each of my children as newborns. "Feeling lucky today, Dr. Ashbrook?" asks Mohammed, the store owner who's known me since his family immigrated from Somalia 15 years ago. "Feeling blessed," I correct with a smile. There's a difference. As I walk home, tickets tucked safely in my purse, I pass the assisted living facility that Melissa had chosen for me. Through the windows, I can see residents sitting in wheelchairs, staring at television screens, waiting for visits from family members who may or may not remember them. That could have been my future if I hadn't found the courage to fight back. Instead, I'm walking home to a house I own, planning volunteer work that will use my skills, anticipating friendships that feed my soul instead of draining my bank account. That evening, I sit in Erwin's study with a cup of tea and a book of poetry I haven't opened in years. The familiar weight of his presence still comforts me, but it no longer feels like the only love available to me. I'm surrounded by community again, connected to purpose again, hopeful about the future again. As I prepare for bed, I kneel beside the mattress where I've said countless prayers over the past decade. But tonight's prayer is different from all the others. "Thank you, Lord Jesus," I whisper into the quiet darkness. "Thank you for giving me the strength to love my children enough to stop enabling their destruction. Thank you for showing me that I still have purpose beyond being their victim. Thank you for reminding me that I am your daughter first, worthy of respect and dignity and joy." The grandfather clock chimes 11 times, marking the end of another day in what feels like an entirely new life. Outside my window, the maple tree Erwin planted rustles in the evening breeze, its branches reaching toward stars that seem brighter tonight than they have in years. I am 67 years old, recently liberated from a family that treated me like a renewable resource rather than a beloved mother. But I am not bitter. I am not broken. I am not finished. I am free. And in that freedom, I'm discovering that God's plans for my life are far more beautiful than anything I had imagined possible. As I drift off to sleep, I smile at the thought that the best chapters of my story may still be unwritten. At 67, I'm finally ready to live them. The woman who was once defined by other people's needs has remembered who she was always meant to be, a daughter of the King, beloved and valuable and deserving of the abundant life he promised to all who seek him with their whole hearts. Tomorrow will bring new adventures, new friendships, new opportunities to serve God by serving others who truly need help rather than just want handouts. Tomorrow will be another day of freedom, Another day of purpose. Another day of the life I almost lost to people who confused love with enabling. But tonight, I rest in the peace that comes from knowing I am exactly where God wants me to be. Free to love Him, free to serve others, and free to be the woman He created me to be before family dysfunction tried to reduce me to nothing more than a checkbook with a heartbeat. I have been reborn at 67, and it feels like the most beautiful miracle of all. 6 months later, I stand in my kitchen on a crisp October morning, watching golden leaves drift past my window like confetti celebrating the most unexpected chapter of my life. The house feels different now. Not empty, but peaceful. Not silent, but serene. The absence of constant crisis has been replaced by the presence of genuine contentment. My days have rhythm and purpose again. Tuesdays and Thursdays at the hospital, where I help cardiac patients understand their procedures and comfort families facing the same fears I once helped Erwin through. Wednesdays with the book club, where 8 women in their 60s and 70s discuss literature and life with the wisdom that comes from surviving decades of joy and heartbreak. Weekends at the parish, serving meals to people who are genuinely grateful rather than entitled. The phone rings, and I answer it without the dread that once accompanied every call. Dr. Ashbrook? This is Jennifer Walsh from the Illinois State Lottery Commission. My heart stops. 6 months ago, in a moment of pure hope over experience, I had bought those lottery tickets with numbers that meant everything to me. I'd forgotten about them completely until last week when I found them tucked in my Bible, marking the page with Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future. Mrs. Ashbrook, are you there? Yes, I whisper, sinking into the kitchen chair where I've shared so many conversations with God. Ma'am, I'm calling to inform you that you are the sole winner of last Saturday's Powerball drawing. The jackpot amount is $25 million. $25 million. The number hangs in the air like a prayer answered in ways I never dared imagine. For a moment I can't breathe, can't think, can't process the magnitude of what she's just told me. Mrs. Ashbrook? Are you all right? I'm more than all right, I managed to say. I'm amazed by God's timing. After the call ends, I sit in my kitchen holding the winning ticket and laughing until tears stream down my face. Not tears of sadness this time, but tears of pure wonder at the mysterious ways the Lord works in the lives of His children. 6 months ago, when my children were plotting to steal my independence and my dignity, I had maybe $200,000 in assets they couldn't touch. Today, I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and they have no claim to any of it. But the lottery win isn't the real miracle. The real miracle is that I don't need their validation anymore to feel wealthy. I've already discovered treasures worth more than money: friendship, purpose, peace, and the unshakable knowledge that I am beloved by the Creator of the universe. The first person I call is Margaret Sullivan. Judith, you sound absolutely giddy. What's happened? Margaret? Remember when you said God hadn't changed His plans for my life just because I'm 67? Of course. Well, apparently His plans included winning the lottery. The silence that follows is filled with such shock that I start laughing again. $25 million, Margaret. $25 million that my children have no legal or moral claim to. Oh, my stars, Margaret breathes. Judith, this is divine justice. She's right. It is divine justice, but not in the way people might expect. The money isn't revenge against my children. It's God's provision for the work He's calling me to do. That afternoon, I meet with Tom Brennan to discuss something I never thought I'd need to plan: what to do with more money than one person could reasonably spend. Judith, this is extraordinary, he says, reviewing the Lottery Commission's paperwork. After taxes, you're looking at approximately $15 million. That's generational wealth. Except the next generation tried to steal everything I had, I reply. So I guess it's up to me to decide where it goes. Have you thought about that? I've thought about little else for the past 3 hours. I pull out a notebook where I've been sketching ideas since the phone call that changed everything. I want to establish a foundation for women over 60 who find themselves victims of elder abuse by family members. Legal assistance, financial counseling, housing support, medical advocacy, Everything I needed but almost couldn't afford. Tom's face lights up with professional excitement. That's brilliant, Judith. And with this amount of money, properly invested, you could help thousands of women. I also want to endow a scholarship program for women returning to medical school later in life. And I want to support the Children's Cardiac Unit at Northwestern. New equipment, family support services, whatever they need. What about your own needs? Your own comfort? I think about the house that's finally peaceful, the friendships that nourish my soul, the volunteer work that gives my days meaning. My needs are simple, Tom. I want to travel, see the places Erwin and I dreamed about visiting. I want to upgrade my kitchen so I can cook for friends without worrying about the stove being too old. I want to establish a small fund for genuine emergencies, not the manufactured crises my children specialized in, but real needs in my community. And your children? Have you heard from them? The question I've been dreading but expecting. No. They chose pride over repentance, remember? But I've been praying for them daily, asking God to soften their hearts and show them a path back to the people He created them to be. Will you tell them about the lottery win? I consider this for a long moment. Eventually, not to torment them, but because I want them to understand something important. I was never the problem. Their greed was the problem. Now they'll see that God provides for His children in ways that have nothing to do with manipulating family members. That evening, I kneel beside my bed with a heart so full of gratitude that words seem inadequate. But I try anyway. Lord Jesus, I don't understand your timing, but I trust your wisdom. 6 months ago, I thought I was losing everything. Tonight, I have more than I ever dreamed possible. Help me be a good steward of this blessing. Help me use it to serve you by serving others who need hope as desperately as I once did. The next morning brings the news coverage. Local television stations want interviews about the mysterious 67-year-old woman who won the lottery and immediately announced plans to give most of it away. I agree to one interview with Channel 7's morning show because I want people to understand that this story isn't really about money. Dr. Ashbrook, the reporter asks, what's the first thing you're going to buy with your winnings? Peace of mind, I reply without hesitation. But I already had that before I won. The lottery just means I can share it with other people. Your children must be thrilled for you. I pause, choosing my words carefully. My children and I are estranged. They've made choices that damaged our relationship, and winning the lottery doesn't change that. But I pray for them daily, and I hope someday they'll find their way back to the values I tried to teach them. Are you concerned they might try to reconcile now that you've won? If they do, I'll know it's about the money, not about love. But I'm not afraid of that anymore. I've learned the difference between family and people who share your DNA. Real family celebrates your blessings. Real family doesn't see you as a resource to be exploited. Within hours of the interview airing, my phone starts ringing. But these aren't calls from Garrett and Melissa. They're calls from other elderly women who've seen the story and recognize their own situations in mine. Dr. Ashbrook, says one tearful voice, I watched your interview and I could have been telling my own story. My son has been stealing from me for years, and I didn't know how to stop it. Can you help me? Another caller. My daughter wants to put me in a nursing home so she can sell my house. I feel so alone and confused. After hearing your story, I think maybe I'm not crazy after all. By the end of the week, I've received over 200 similar calls. Women whose children treat them like ATMs. Women whose families gaslight them into believing they're incompetent. Women who've lost their sense of worth because the people who should love them most have reduced them to their financial utility. The foundation I'd planned to establish someday suddenly becomes an urgent necessity. 3 months later, the Ashbrook Foundation for Elder Dignity opens its doors in a restored brownstone on Chicago's North Side. Our mission statement, which I wrote while sitting in the same kitchen where my children once ambushed me with their guardianship scheme, reads, to restore dignity, independence, and hope to older adults who have been victimized by those they trusted most. Our first client is Dorothy Chen, an 80-year-old widow whose grandson had been forging her signature to fund his gambling addiction. Our legal team helps her reclaim her assets. Our counselors help her process the betrayal. Our financial advisors help her protect what's left. Dr. Ashbrook, she says after her first week in our program, you saved my life. not just my money. My life. I was starting to believe I really was too confused to manage my own affairs. Dorothy, I reply, you saved your own life by having the courage to ask for help. I just provided the resources you needed to save yourself. On Christmas Eve, I attend midnight mass at St. Michael's, surrounded by friends who've become my chosen family. Margaret Sullivan sits beside me, along with Rose Patterson from Book Club and Maria Santos from the Parish Meal Program. Helen Rodriguez has flown in from Phoenix to spend the holidays with me, and we're planning a New Year's trip to Scotland, one of the places Erwin and I always meant to visit. As Father McKenna delivers his homily about the unexpected ways God brings light into darkness, I think about the journey that brought me to this moment. A year ago, I was sitting in this same pew, feeling abandoned by God and exploited by my children, wondering if love required me to accept abuse indefinitely. Tonight, I understand that the darkest period of my life was actually preparation for the brightest. God was teaching me to distinguish between love and enabling, between family and exploitation, between forgiveness and foolishness. He was preparing me to help other women who would face similar battles. My phone buzzes softly in my purse. A text message from an unknown number. Mom, we saw the news about your foundation. We're proud of you. Love, Melissa. I stare at the message for a long moment, then delete it without responding. Pride after the fact isn't the same as repentance. Support for my success isn't the same as accountability for their failures. If they want a relationship with me, they'll need to do more than send a text message after seeing me featured in Fortune magazine as Philanthropist of the Year. After Mass, as I drive home through streets decorated with Christmas lights, I think about the question Father McKenna posed during his sermon. What would you do if you knew God was preparing you for something magnificent? I know the answer now. I would endure whatever training he required, even if it felt like abandonment at the time. I would trust his timing, even when it seemed impossibly delayed. I would believe in his love, even when I couldn't feel it. And I would remember that sometimes the most devastating losses are actually disguised preparations for the most extraordinary blessings. At home, I make hot chocolate and sit in my living room, looking at the Christmas tree I decorated for myself this year. Under it are gifts I bought for the staff at the foundation, for my new friends, for the nurses at the cardiac unit who've become like daughters to me. No gifts for Garrett and Melissa. Not because I don't love them, but because love sometimes means allowing people to experience the natural consequences of their choices until they choose differently. As I prepare for bed, I kneel one final time beside the mattress where I've said countless prayers over the past year. Thank you, I whisper, for everything, for the pain that taught me strength, for the loneliness that drove me back to you, for the betrayal that revealed my true worth, for the freedom that allowed me to discover your plans for my life, and for the abundance that lets me share hope with other women who need to know they're worth more than what people want to take from them. The clock chimes midnight, marking the beginning of Christmas Day and the end of a year that changed everything. I'm 67 years old. I'm worth $25 million. I run a foundation that's helped over 300 women reclaim their lives from predatory family members. I have friends who love me for who I am rather than what I can give them. I have purpose that extends far beyond writing checks to solve other people's self-created problems. But most importantly, I have the unshakable knowledge that I am beloved by God, valued beyond measure, and worthy of respect, dignity, and joy. My children may have rejected these truths, but I've finally embraced them. And that, more than any lottery win, is the miracle that saved my life. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced something like this? Or do you know someone who has gone through a similar situation? And how did faith help you get through it? Please share your answer in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please leave your like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone who needs to hear it. May God bless everyone who has been through something like this. In Jesus' name, Amen.